My name is Sophie. I am 18 years old from Canada, and this happened to me when I was 18 at Maplewood Academy, which is what we call a secondary school in Canada. This is the scariest day of my life, and I'm about to tell you why. I know it sounds dramatic, but you'll understand. To explain, my school has ID lanyards, and although anyone can enter the building, you can only pass the lobby if you scan one of these ID cards, which unlocks the doors. The ID cards have a picture and your name, but many kids flip them over, so you can't see their face. You also need it to open almost every door in the school, except classrooms. Additionally, it's a newly built school, really small but looks bigger because of the large building. 1/3 of the building is a special needs school for kids with learning disabilities. Another third is a daycare, and the last third is the actual high school. I had just started at the high school part, and I remember being told on the first day not to let anyone we didn't know into the school. The day this happened was the second week of school, but actually only my second full day because I had been sick the first week. I had geography all day, and it happened about 20 minutes after lunch. I remember I drank a lot of juice from the cafeteria at lunch because I had to finish it before the break ended, since we weren't allowed to bring drinks into class, and I had nowhere to put it without spilling. So 20 minutes later, yes, I really needed to go to the bathroom. I asked the teacher if I could go quickly, and usually we weren't allowed to leave during class. He was annoyed because we had just had a break, but he saw I really needed to go, so he reluctantly agreed. This was important because at this time, no one else was really moving around the school. I didn't even usually see teachers walking around during class. I left the classroom and went through a set of double doors into the cafeteria. And remember, no one was there at that time. I continued into another large room with a second set of classrooms, used the bathroom, and returned to the cafeteria to go back to class. When I came back through the cafeteria doors, a man was sitting at one of the tables. Having someone there wasn't unusual. Like I said, people usually didn't move around during class, but they still did. I didn't know who he was. He was too old to be a student, so I assumed he was a teacher or a parent, and I kept walking. But then he said, "Hey!" and I screamed because I'm a bit anxious and jumpy, and I didn't expect him to talk to me. I was embarrassed, but he laughed and said, "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." That's when I noticed he actually had a lanyard. So, at this point, I assumed he was a teacher. What I realized, looking back, is that although he had a lanyard with an ID, the ID was flipped so the picture and name faced the back of the holder. As I said, kids do this at school. The scanner still works, so it wasn't a big deal. But certainly unusual for a teacher. He said, "I need help getting some work supplies from my car. Would you mind going out with me for a moment?" I said, "Yes, okay." We walked out of the cafeteria in silence, into the lobby, then out of the building, and I noticed he seemed a bit nervous, like a teacher who usually chats with you when you walk somewhere with them. But he didn't talk. He also moved his hands a lot. Sometimes he put his hands in his pockets, then took them out and held them together. I'm shy and not great in social situations, so I didn't T3 to talk. With a layout of the school front, after leaving the building, you'd have about 50 meters, roughly 55 yards, to the parking lot, which you can't see until you're right next to it because there's a line of bushes blocking it. If you went straight without turning into the parking lot, you'd leave the campus. So we walked to the parking lot in silence. Then he suddenly said, "Yes, my stuff is in the trunk." That's what we call a trunk in Canada. He said, "I have a few bags, so I just need you to help me carry some into the school." I said, "Yes, okay." We reached the parking lot, and he said, "My car is the blue one at the end." A few meters away, I could see something in the back seat. As we got closer, I realized there were at least 2 men hiding in the back seat. I froze, and instead of running, I blinked, and I guess they realized I could see them because the back door opened, and suddenly a man climbed out of the car, and the man I thought was a teacher grabbed my arm as I turned to run back to the school. This guy was tall, by the way. I'm 1.57 meters and quite skinny, so I don't know how I did it, but with a surge of adrenaline, I jerked my arm away and ran back to the school. I froze, and instead of running, I blinked, and I guess they realized I could see them because the back door opened, and suddenly a man climbed out of the car, and the man I thought was a teacher grabbed my arm as I turned to run back to the school. This guy was tall, by the way. I'm 1.57 meters and quite skinny, so I don't know how I did it, but with a surge of adrenaline, I jerked my arm away and ran back to the school. I could hear heavy footsteps chasing me, but thank God they stopped fairly quickly after I started running, because our school has large automatic glass doors, and you just wait for them to open. And they surely would have caught up if they continued. I guess the fact they were glass doors made it risky if someone passed by. Anyway, I ran into the lobby and straight into the open cafe, which connects to the library. I ran to the person working at the cafe to tell her what happened. She calmed me down and went with me into the school to the teacher's office, calling my parents and the police. There were security cameras in the parking lot, so they were caught and charged with attempted kidnapping. It turns out the man had gained access to the building because a kid had dropped an ID outside the school, and that's what he used, which is why he flipped the ID. I didn't attend school for a few weeks, and I'm still processing this experience in therapy, but I feel writing and sharing the story helps me deal with it. This remains the scariest experience of my life.